Hey, the Cardinals are playing good baseball right now. Specifically, Paul Goldschmidt's playing pretty good baseball right now. Should that change the Cardinals' decision to bring him back or not? Should there be an extension in play this offseason? Also, John Mozeliak kind of hinting like the DeWitts have that payroll's probably going to go down this offseason. And it really feels like they want to kind of pin it on the fans not showing up as part of the problem. We'll react to that and more on this episode of Dealing the Cards. Oh man, Andrew. It's if this is your first time tuning in to Dealing the Cards, my name is Josh. This is Andrew. Sandy's not with us today, but we are the hosts of the Dealing the Cards podcast, and we go live twice a week on our YouTube channel on Wednesdays and Sundays typically, and we also have a new prospect podcast called Birds on the Farm. Which you can check that out with Kareem. You might know him from Twitter. Just really great prospect stuff over there. So definitely subscribe, like this video if you're watching. Especially if you're a typical listener, it really helps the video out and channel out a ton. When comment down below as well, that helps out a lot. So please let us know as you're listening. React to our takes, give your takes. Helps influence our future episodes and stuff. And if you're live here as well, again, react as well. But yeah, so one of the big things. Sorry, I got glitchy for a second there and I know why, so I fixed it. One of the big things that's kind of talking about in the Cardinal servers right now, Andrew, is the whole Paul Goldschmidt thing. So let's run through the numbers a little bit. Last 7 games, this is insane. His last 7 games, his batting average is 517. he's a hit more in over half his at bats. He's 15 for 29, so 517 batting average, 533 on base percentage, 862 slugging percentage. That's a short sample size, right? Okay, so let's zoom out 15 games. He's batting 375, 403, a 610 slug. So that's over 1,000 OPS over his last 15 games. Zoom out to last 30 games. It's 301, 358, 531. That's over an 800 OPS. It's actually close to a 900 OPS. So Goldie's looked pretty good lately. I did look because someone asked me this the other day. What's his numbers with runners in scoring position during that time? So since the beginning of August, he's still like 20% below league average with runners in scoring position. So definitely fair to critique that thing. Keep that in mind. But at least we could say right now he's clearly playing really well. Andrew, for you, I think we've talked about most of the season that Goldschmidt probably needs to go. What do you think? Does his play as of late open your perspective up, open your mind to potentially bring back Goldschmidt? Or if not, is there anything he can do down the stretch to convince you that the Cardinals should bring it back next year?
Yeah, I feel like we're at the point in the season now where it's kind of the opposite that we were looking at earlier in the season, where it's like, oh, it's early in the season. Paul Goldschmidt is playing bad in a small sample size, but he'll be fine. It's okay. But I feel like we're a little bit at the point where it's kind of the opposite now, where it's like,
Mm.
oh, well, he's been kind of bad all year. This is a bit of a small sample size. But I would be a little bit careful to write him off because he's a future Hall of Famer. He can go through struggles and figure stuff out. And I mean, I don't know what the numbers with runners in scoring position look like over the last couple of days, but it's definitely been better than it has been at the start of the season, middle of the season. And I don't know. It is definitely making it a lot more interesting of a decision. I think personally, if the season ended tomorrow, I wouldn't bring him back because I think the ship has sailed on him as a platoon bat. I think the way he's playing right now, he can easily find a job somewhere else where he's starting every day. I think definitely there would be another team that will take a flyer on him in that situation, but maybe not the Cardinals because they have Alec Burleson, who's been really good, and Luken Baker, who's been really good. But I would also be careful. Maybe this is wrong of me to say, but we've seen young hitters from the Cardinals come up after 1 year and be really, really cool and really good and really promising, like Tyler O'Neill and like Nolan Gorman and like Dylan Carlson. And Alec Burleson was a top 100 prospect at one point, but I don't think he has the prospect pedigree to be exactly like what he is right now. Like, obviously, it's possible that he's like that, but the way this organization handles development, you might want to have an insurance plan of Goldie and just have Burleson bounce around between outfield and DH and try to prove himself again because we've had a lot of issues getting second year success out of our young players recently. Jordan Walker's another example of that. Obviously, his defense wasn't good, but his bat was very serviceable and sort of fell off again in year 2. So I don't know. Maybe you want to have that insurance and you wouldn't sign him to a multi-year deal, I would hope. Probably just go year to year at this point, kind of like you did with Yachty and Wayno and those
Mm,
guys. But I hope if the Cardinals do this, it's because that they kind of saw something that we're not really seeing right now. That he was really like, it wasn't really age-related regression. Maybe there was something just wrong with his mechanics or something that wasn't maybe as like age regression based. I don't know, just throwing something like that out there, and he finally maybe figured it out, and he's going to be a really good hitter for the rest of the year, and that would be great. But hopefully it's because the Cardinals were always interested in extending him and not because of this hot stretch.
yeah. Which, to be fair, at the very least, like we knew that they were talking this offseason, and then both sides decided let's wait and see. Like, I don't think there's ever been reporting that the Cardinals are for sure moving on from Paul Goldschmidt. I think it's more like anecdotally, outside looking in, we're like, it makes sense to move on, right? So I don't think I don't like, I've that's a good point from you, but I haven't heard some like any reporting say the Cardinals, oh, like Goldie's play recently has made them want him back again. Like it seems like they were always planning on exploring it. It's just more of like from our perspective, does it make sense or not? Andrew, what do you think? What do you think Alec Burleson's numbers are like in the second half right now?
Not good, which is why I'm worried about regression for
Yeah.
next year.
So right now, he's second half, he's slashing 256, 314, 359. That's good for a 673 OPS and 91 WRC plus. It's not the same right now from him. I still like Alec Burleson a lot. I'm still really excited about him. Um, can you hear my dog barking right now? Sorry about that. I might have to mute and go stop him. But the Luken Baker side of things, like I don't. This is what happens when you go live, guys. He never parks. This is weird. Andrew, while I go stop him from this, tell us about your confidence in Luken Baker.
Yeah, Luken Baker, he's been great so far, right? But he's batting under 200, I believe, still. His OPS is unsustainably high for someone whose batting average is that low. Um, but his play discipline has looked a lot more impressive than it has last season, right? He's slashing 167, 370 on base, which is pretty good for an OPS of 926. And I think it would be very interesting to see Luken Baker platoon against left-handed pitching, which is where he shines. We've seen that in AAA. We've seen that in the big league so far. But yeah, Kareem, I agree. He should not be hitting against righties. I don't think Burleson currently should be hitting against lefties. I think there's more of a shot that Burleson will develop and become more of a competent bat against both sides and not be as heavily like split towards right-handed pitchers or whatnot. So I think Luken Baker is probably a 1 or 2 year stopgap while Burleson figures out how to hit against left-handed pitching. If that's something that the Cardinals end up going with, if Burleson ends up being exactly what we saw this season, like I'm still very excited to see what he can do in the future. Like he showed us that he's a lot better than a fourth or fifth outfielder, like we saw last year in 2022. But I have my reservations, mostly based on his second half play and also a little bit because of just how Cardinals players fare in year two. Um, and that's really frustrating to see, right? Because we've been burned a little bit too many times. Like, oh, Tyler O'Neill finally figured it out. Dylan Carlson's been really exciting. I think the only like homegrown talent that we've had that's been decently good or like kept up their standards in year two was Brendan Donovan, and then he got hurt.
Mm.
So that was unfortunate. So I want to see a player do that. Hopefully that's Burleson. Hopefully Nolan Gorman can maybe do that next year. Maybe Lars Nootbaar will finally live up to our expectations. But we're wandering into
Well,
long talk.
I
But
think that is helpful stuff. Like Newt's been playing better lately, so that's really exciting. And like you've seen some of
yeah,
Walker like hit or miss. And I do think Goldie's struggles probably don't feel as glaring this year. If like, and in so many ways, Goldie like Nado's started to, like no Goldie and Nado were taking all the heat for a while, but Nado's turned it on. It's not ideal still, obviously, but it's better. Goldie has been better lately, but on the season's been pretty terrible. Everyone wants to throw that Goldie. Nootbaar's been bad relative to expectations. I'm not saying no one's acknowledging that, but like Nootbaar doesn't get enough kind of like flack, I guess, for not producing. Donovan, again, I think he's been great, really like good this year as a player, but like at the plate, it's really regressed lately. Burleson's not like honestly, I think so many like people, I shouldn't say so many people. There are people that don't really like are kind of like just think of Alec Burleson a first half Alec Burleson still. It's like when he doesn't play or something, or like when they talk about the Cardinals lineup, like, well, they only have Alec Burleson. So well, to your point, Alec Burleson in the second half hasn't been that good. Jordan Walker, again, we've barely seen him really contribute this year. There's just been a lot of Nolan Gorman, a lot of underperforming players this year. I think Goldschmidt's struggles aren't as concern, or they are still concerning, but they're just not as glaring if some of the other guys are producing more. You still look at Goldschmidt's year stats right now, like on the year, he's almost 30% above league average against left-handed pitching. Like that's awesome. You want that kind of guy in your lineup. Now, again, with runners in scoring position, it's historically bad, but I don't know how much like is there some positive regression that could come there next year potentially. Over this stretch, he's been really good against right-handed and left-handed pitching. He's 40% above league average since the beginning of August against right-handed pitching, almost 70% against left-handed pitching. Like that's a really good bat for your lineup. I think for me, the Goldschmidt conversation all really boils down to is, which we'll get into in a minute, like how much are the Cardinals going to spend on their payroll? I think that matters a little bit about how much flexibility you have to bring back a Goldschmidt. It matters to me how he finishes some. Like if he just totally looks lost again at the end of the year, then it's like, okay, like he had a cool stretch there, but like, and then 3, and I actually think this is the most important thing for me is how willing would the Cardinals be to bench him or to give him a reduced role next season if it's not going well? Because if they're just going to ride him the whole year, no matter how it's looking, I don't know if I want to sign up for that again. But if they're like, hey, Goldie, we'll bring you back at even 15 million. But if this isn't going well, you might just become a platoon bat or you might become a bench bat. I'm more open to that. The frustration for me is if they are not open to moving around, because to your point, like it is a lot of eggs to put in the Alec Burleson basket, especially with how the second half has looked. Luken Baker, honestly, in some ways feels like a Cardinal type thing to do to try and save money and not invest in a guy like Burleson or Goldschmidt, who's been producing against left-handed pitching. And we just haven't seen enough for Baker. I would like to see Baker more down the stretch to see what you have in him, but I don't have any, like even to say he's the full-time platoon left hand against lefties at first base. That seems like a little bit of a stretch to me already. Like I don't think we've seen enough to say something like that. I also think like if you fire Turner Ward this offseason, like who knows what he could do with like a new hitting coach could do with Goldschmidt. Like there's some other areas, other things you can do to potentially like make this seem a little bit better next year. I'm not going to act like Goldschmidt's back to his normal self next year, but I mean, he's slightly above, he's about 7% below league average against right-handed pitching. He's 27% better than league average against left-handed. If he could be a little bit more like above league average against right-handed pitching next year, I think it feels a lot better. And again, if those woes with runners in scoring position can improve, would be great too. So I'm open to it. I also think a really interesting note here that I'm not sure if people understand how the CBA works with this, but the Cardinals are not going to sign Paul Goldschmidt until after he hits free agency, because if they were to extend him now, I think they have to offer him 80% of what he makes right now, like at least. And that's not happening. Like, I don't think they're offering him 18 million, but, and also the money matters. Like if you're telling me Paul Goldschmidt's coming back at $20 million next year, I'm like, 15, more open to it. 10, I'm really like $10 million. People act like it's a lot of money in Major League Baseball. It's like a lot of veterans get like a flyer $10 million deal. Like Goldschmidt will get to at least 10 million from someone. So
the Cardinals really should do is they should talk to Goldie, give him a qualifying offer, and make him decline it. So then when he signs somewhere else, they have to give the Cardinals a draft pick.
I mean, I don't necessarily trust their ability to fill out the market, but if they think he'll get a deal elsewhere, like get him the qualifying offer. Why not? Because I could see Houston being interested in him for this next year. I could see Milwaukee wanting him. I could see Arizona wanting him. There's just different teams that I think will talk themselves into. Whoa, lots of things for me today. Sneezing, dogs barking, all the things. Lots of things that I think there'll be teams that are interested. But yeah, I'm not super pro bring back Paul Goldschmidt. I'm also not super out on it either. A lot of it's just context to me. How much does he want? How much are the Cardinals willing to spend on payroll in general? Again, the biggest thing for me, and I don't know about you, but the biggest thing for me is will they be willing to bite the bullet and move his role down, or are they going to run him to the ground next year if it's not working out? Because even if you tell me there's a 50-50 chance he'll be really good or really bad, I'm not signing up for it if I can't guarantee they're going to start playing out Burleson, Luken, Baker more if Goldie is not working out. So that's kind of where I'm at. And also, they could look for a different right-handed platoon option for first base in free agency. It doesn't have to be Paul Goldschmidt or Luken Baker. It could be, I don't know. There's probably names out there that would make sense. Carlos Santana. Like, I don't know. I'm just throwing random types of guys out there where I'm like, yeah, why not try that out without Burleson? So I also think this team's defense improves hopefully, with Alec Burleson playing first base and less outfield. But like, I want him getting more first base reps so he can get better defensively there. But who knows? I mean, you do have the DH spot. There's ways to make it work. So we'll keep talking about the Paul Goldschmidt side of things anecdotally through this, but we want to really hone in on a bigger conversation, bigger picture conversation that's kind of appeared over the last few days. But before we do that, I want to thank one of our sponsors of our podcast, and it's 314 Sports Cards and Collectibles. Again, if you've been listening to us, you know about 314. They're awesome. They do all kinds of sports cards, Pokemon cards, baseball, NFL, all that kind of stuff. And you can find them at 9640 Olive Boulevard in Olivet, and they're open 10 to 5 Monday through Friday, 9 to 4 on Saturdays. They buy, sell, and trade cards, packs, box sets, all that kind of stuff. So if you're interested in sports trading cards, Pokemon cards, all that kind of stuff, go check out 314 Sports Cards and Collectibles. Tell them we sent you. Occasionally we'll do pack openings on here, which is super fun. So last time Andrew was pulling a bunch of big names. So that was pretty fun. Also, they're really active on Instagram, so go follow them over there on 314 Sports Cards and Collectibles on Instagram. They'll post like new cards, special cards they have in stock, or deals they have going on. So that's a great way to get to know what's going on. Also, if you guys are going to the ballpark at all over the next few games, I mean, the Cardinals are playing better baseball. So even if it's very unlikely they're going to make the playoffs, it's still fun baseball to watch right now. Use our code NEWT over at SeatGeek, and you can get $20 off any purchases of $50 or more. So if you're going to go to the game and you want to get good tickets, or you're going to go with a friend and you want to save some money on tickets together, use our code NEWT to do that. So, Andrew, I don't know if you heard the little clip of John Mozeliak with Tom Ackerman the other day. And basically Ackerman was asking him about the attendance at the ballpark, and Mozeliak was like, yeah, you're not used to seeing this in St. Louis. You don't love it. You go look at how Yankee Stadium's filled up right now, and it's just not like that here. And it's like, well, no duh, because Yankees are awesome. They have Aaron Judge and Juan Soto, and you're barely 500, and it's not the same.
Yeah, maybe Mo should have traded Dylan Carlson for Juan Soto.
Okay, no, stop. Don't do that. Don't do that. I do think it's fair to wonder what could have happened there, but it's not Dylan Carlson. We're not getting into that today. Stop riling me up. So that whole conversation happened, but then the real stuff opened up where he started to kind of allude to they've got to recalibrate their expectations. They got to recalibrate things, and he's hoping fans will still support them based on the recalibration, whatever, based on lack of attendance, lack of concession sales, the RSN uncertainty. Oh boy. Andrew, it seems like payroll's going down. And the question is how much, right? Like, are they going to go down 10 million? Or are they going to go down 5 million? Are they just not going to increase payroll? Are they going to drop 30 million, 50 million? Like, I don't know. That's one thing to me.
The right after they've used the last couple of seasons is that the payroll is going to go up, and the payroll went up each year by like 2%. So maybe the payroll only go down by like 2%.
I actually think you're right. Like, that is something that definitely could happen. So I think when people hear payrolls going down, like, I'm not even messing around. Like, there's a chance this isn't a huge drop by any means, but it will be frustrating to fans. I want to hear your perspective first. When you hear Mo or the DeWitts talk about payroll and it potentially going down after a disappointing season, like, in theory, business wise, it makes sense. You're not making as much money, so you're going to cut costs somewhere. But like, we're talking about running a sports team and your fans, and I think there will be a certain section of the fan base, and I don't think they're wrong to say, hey, you should invest more into the team to get interest in. How frustrated are you when you hear comments like this?
I'm pretty frustrated because it's a sign that things like need to change when the team's losing, right? And this is an organization that's not we're not the Pirates, we're not the Reds. We don't do that, right? We don't rebuild. That's kind of the rhetoric that's been thrown around for a while. And if the Cardinals aren't going to rebuild and they're going to go into the offseason with the team that they have constructed and not really with any star names and not with any homegrown talent, it's going to be really hard to compete next year in an NL Central that has a lot of rising talent, right? You can convince me that the Cubs are going to be a lot better next year than they are this year, that the Reds are going to be a lot better than they are this year, and that the Pirates, well, I think are probably going to be one of the better teams in the division with all that young talent coming up. They're going to be a lot better than they are this year. The Brewers, I don't know. They're the Brewers. I don't really. I choose to write them off now, because like I don't know what they're gonna do, right? Like I'll just write them off and be like, yeah, sure, they're gonna be really good next year. I don't know. But the Cardinals are the kind of the team in the division that looks a little bit directionless, right? Like
Hmm.
Paul Goldschmidt, your cornerstone first baseman, is hitting free agency, and you don't know if you even want to bring him back. Nolan Arenado's regressed significantly, and all the young bats that we were so excited about, none of them really panned out this year. And some of them kind of cratered, like Nolan Gorman, Jordan Walker, a little bit. Um, and you just don't really know where you're going to be. And that's fine. You can say that. You can say that payroll's going to go down. We're going to see some of the young talent play. But if Mo patches this rotation with, well, throw out some names like Walker Bueller and Max Scherzer, which I've seen thrown around as potential, like that's more intriguing than Lyndon Gibson, but like two guys that have significant injury history. And he's like, "Yep, we're going for it." And like you, like 4 years ago, Walker Bueller, Max Scherzer would have been the most exciting thing in the world, right? But now they're both kind of reclamation projects. You don't really know what you're going to get out of them. And Mo says, "We believe we have what it takes to win. We really like what we have." And that takes away opportunities from like Michael McGreevy or Quinn Matthews or Goring Graceffa. Like those names aren't necessarily comparable, or like Tink Hence or whoever. And then he signs, I don't know, like some random outfielder like Jason Hayward to fill in right field, and that takes away at bats from like Walker and Scott and some of the guys that really need to get playing time. And for whatever reason, Jason Hayward decided he really wants to be in St. Louis, even though he didn't before. Then maybe,
Jeez.
like, I would be really frustrated with that. And it kind of
Yeah.
sounds like Mo would do that, right? He would do something like that. Maybe not those exact names. Maybe those names would be really good next year. I don't know. But by selling us on these names that aren't necessarily proven talent, selling us on like, oh, as long as you make it to the playoffs, like selling us the same rhetoric over and over again. Like he can go out right now and say, yeah, we might not make the playoffs next year, but Jordan Walker's going to get regular playing time. Victor Scott's going to start every day in center field. Alec Burleson and Luken Baker are going to platoon at first base, and we're just going to kind of see what we have. I think that would be fine, right? I wouldn't hate that. But I guarantee you, based on the way this organization is run, they're going to go out, sign some guys that are near the end of their primes, or sign some guys that are like just innings eaters, don't have high ceilings, and they're just going to sell it as, look, the Cardinals are going to we're going to bring back Cardinal baseball, and it's not going to be great. And that sounds like what they're going to do. I don't know anything, obviously, but that's what they've done year after year, and like it's stopped working, and like they need to go a different direction. It all depends on how Mo sells it.
Yeah, I do think interest wise, it depends how Mo sells it for sure. Um, yeah. So going back to the like question of like how does it make me feel that they would potentially shrink payroll? I don't actually care as much. I think like I'm not of the like I think there's some people and I don't think it's a huge I don't think it's wrong to be frustrated and don't spend more. You hit it right as I was about to critique him. Literally, is about to be
Okay,
like,
well,
it's not even I was because the amount of money you spend or you given to spend is DeWitt. How you spend it's Mo.
mhm.
Except I do think the DeWitts give their input on who they should sign. I don't think it's just Mozeliak, but that's okay. There's Lucas and Doug or G Doug have put in here. There might be other people who put in here. The problem is how they spend the money. Because Andrew, the Cleveland Guardians are one of the best teams in baseball right now. They spend $80 million less on payroll.
I get that, and I understand that. I understand that there's organizations that do it way better than we do.
I'm not
And
saying the Cardinals.
they've built that over time.
Yeah, that's what. But
Right?
that's
The
my.
Cardinals can't. The Cardinals can't go from the ground up right now and be like, "Oh, we're going to be competitive next year,"
But
right? Because the guys that we have are not ready.
But what I'm saying is, I think it's going to continue to be this over and over and over again, unless one of two things happens. They significantly raise payroll to make up for the short-term issues they have, while long-term building out to become an organization like that. But we know they're not going to do that. The second option is you take a year or two or a couple or more, and you start building out your organization to be this kind of organization that can maximize the young talent you have, that can maximize the free agent signings you have, that can identify and maximize the trades you make, so that you are a team that maximizes the talent you have overall. And we've consistently seen other teams do more with less. And when the Cardinals won the World Series in 2011, they didn't have the biggest payroll in baseball. They're about net teens, right? Like upper teens. Same with 2006. But to your point, they had Albert Pujols, they had Scott Rowland, they had Jim Edmonds, they had Matt Holliday. So they had those guys, but they also had the Chris Carpenter who blew out his shoulder with the Blue Jays. They brought him in. He ended up being awesome. They went and found Chris Carpenter. They traded for Adam Wainwright as a prospect. They traded for David Freese as a prospect. They raised up Shelby Miller. They raised up Carlos Martinez. They have to get back to doing that. They have to get back to being one of the organizations that's a class of baseball, because the way baseball is played today, you have to be one of three things. You have to be able to outspend people and spend it well. So you could be the Mets when it goes well, or the Yankees, or the Phillies are a good example of this. They've spent a lot of money. They spent it really well. You can be the Rays, the Guardians, or whatever, who just do everything else super well because you can't spend money, or you're the powerhouse organizations like the Dodgers and the Braves who spend more than everyone and they develop and have a good organization. The Cardinals are not going to spend like them. The only way they can get back to being a World Series contender is to be a team that drafts and develops well, that trades for interesting talent and maximizes their usage, that makes smart free agent signings. And the Cardinals have gone away from doing that. They've made Sonny Gray I liked, Wilson Contreras I liked, Dexter Fowler was bad, Brett Cecil was bad, Miles Michaelis extension was bad, Steven Matz was bad. You look at all the ways the Cardinals have misspent money. That's the bigger issue here. And then also the lack of being able to develop your own talent. So when I hear the Cardinals are potentially going to lower payroll, that in itself, I'm not happy about it. And I think if they want to win the graces of fans back, they should also invest some more into the team too. But if the Cardinals don't change anything about their model this offseason, aside from spending more money, that doesn't make me think it's going to get better. I actually trust a world where they just drop payroll from 180 to 150, but they change their model and they overhaul their staffing, they overhaul the front office, and they start making innovative changes to the organization. I trust that more than I do them raising their payroll to 200 million.
So do you think Chaim Bloom oversees this then?
Yes. So if
do you think they give Mo his last year of let's go sign Max Scherzer and let's keep Kyle Gibson and all of that? Do you think? Because I think if Mo stays, that's what's going to happen.
And recently, for a while, I thought that Mo was going to step away and Chaim was going to take over, and Mo would be there but not there. I think Mo will be present, but I do think it's going to be Chaim's show. And I do think at the end of the day, Chaim will have final call. I don't think just if they're going to announce this plan and Chaim's the next guy, I don't think Mo's going to have the authority to consistently trump Chaim on stuff if Chaim's if they're like, hey, this is Chaim's team, going to be Chaim's team. Because that's a weird way to team build, to be like, hey, Mo, I don't want to do this. And Mo's like, whatever, I'm in charge for one more year, I'm going to do it, when Chaim's got the next 5 to 10 years of Cardinal baseball. So I do think it'll be a mixture, and it honestly could help Chaim in some ways. I don't think Mo's I don't want Mo making decisions anymore, but I don't think it's terrible to have him advising and to be a part of the process, as long as he's not the one making the final calls. I do think if they name Chaim as the guy this offseason, what that tells me is that the DeWitts and Mo, which I believe this, for as much as criticism, and again, I don't want this to sound like I'm trying to defend them. I think we could spend hours on hours criticizing what's happened this year and the past few years, really since 2016. What I think is actually encouraging is the fact that they did look for Hein Bloom and they brought him in and the projects they've given him, because what I think they want him to do what he can do. I don't think they're trying to mold him into something else. I think they actually see him as a guy that can do what he was supposed to be doing in Boston, but they're not going to drive him out of town if it doesn't work within 2 years. Like, they're going to give Heim the runway to build out a sustainable organization. And that's actually a really encouraging and good thing for Cardinal fans. And it might be painful at times, but I think it'll work long term. And so that is what I think we need to see them move toward. And if it's not Heim, then like something like that. They bring in someone from like a Guardians organization, someone from the Jeff Luhnow tree, someone from the Rays time, like something like that that can fresh eyes in the organization. I'm blanking on his name right now, but he was with the Cardinals for a while. If Kareem's in the chat still, he's with the Orioles now. I'm blanking on his name. I think he oversees their scouting now. Like, if they bring in someone like that, innovative mind, someone's different, that can work on building out this organization, making a top class, cutting edge organization again, that's what matters more than spending more. I'm not saying they shouldn't spend more. I think they should too. I'm just saying that is not the hill I'm going to die on, because we've already seen they don't know how to spend money well. So like, what is an extra $20 million going to get you? Like, if they did Max Scherzer this offseason, I'd like that better than going after Cal Gibson and Lance Lynn. I think that's a little bit higher ceiling. Walker Buehler is kind of like, again, I'm not saying these specifically, but like Walker would be interesting because it's like, well, could you get a guy who used to be one young dynamic arm, injuries happened, can you rekindle what was in him rather than going after the innings eater mid guy? Like, the ceiling for a Kyle Gibson is a mid starter, right? Like, ceiling for Lance Smith. The ceiling for Walker Buehler is like, oh, he's Walker Buehler again, or it's, oh, he's injured the whole year. Like, I'd actually rather them do some stuff like that, because that has high risk, high reward on it, versus we're just kind of middle and try to kind of win. So does that all make sense to you, or is that like, am I still like,
I get that. I don't know. I don't want Mo leading this because it's not even going to be Walker Buehler. It's going to be like, I'm trying to think. Like, I don't even pay attention to those free agents. Like, I'm going to be honest. When we signed Kyle Gibson, I was like, oh, he's a free agent. I didn't know. Right? Like I didn't know.
No,
I knew Lance Lynn was a free agent because the White Sox traded him as a rental piece, and I was like, okay, well, please don't bring him back, but they did. So
I agree. I 1,000% agree. Mo shouldn't be running the show this offseason. And these are the conversations that more like, I'm not trying to say people shouldn't get mad about payroll going down. It's true, but I think keep the main thing the main thing. That's a leadership principle right there. The main thing is Mo. Like, the Mozeliak front office needs to stop. Like, it needs to transition to something else. It doesn't mean Mo needs fired. It needs at the very least, means Mo needs to step into a different role. It needs to be given over to outside eyes like a Hein Bloom, and they need to move in a new direction. That's the most important thing right now. I don't even care if they drop to 20th in payroll next year. I think that's better for the organization long term. Now, if they stay there and they do stuff like that, that's a problem. They need to be an organization that spends around at least 10th in baseball, like around the area. If it's 12th, 13th, whatever. I prefer it to be even higher though, but that's acceptable to me. But the main thing is they need different leadership. They need to overhaul what's going on. And that's just, I feel confident they're going to do that. I should say I'm cautiously optimistic they're going to do that. But would I be shocked at this point if we roll to November and it's not that? Not really. Because I don't know. I couldn't believe that they brought in Bloom this past year to do all he's done, and that he's invested all that time not to take over. Like, I think they are fully intent on giving him the reins. And I think for him to have stuck around this long, I kind of doubt he's doing that just to be like, actually, I don't want to be here. So that's what gives me confidence it's going to happen. Maybe it won't happen as quickly as I want it to. But again, I even think, like, just thinking the health of the organization, I think Mozeliak wants to end well and hand off well. I think it's part of why he's here. I think that's why the DeWitts want him here. I think something that's under talked about is how back when the Walt Jocketty was let go, how divided and how muddy and messy the Cardinals front office was at the time. It just became a mess, and Mozeliak brought stability and continuity. And those are words we don't like now, and for good reason. But I think it's something that the DeWitts hold on to because they're like, we know what it was like when it was so messy and the front office hated each other and there's these divisions and factions. We don't want that again. We like our continuity. We like uniformity. We like unity. And so, at some point, and Mo's even said this publicly, like at some point there's too much of that. They flipped way too much into we only think about our way. We think we've got all the answers. We do all the right things. We don't listen to other people. And now they're bringing in Heim. They're bringing in someone who's going to rub people the wrong way, who's going to shake things up, who's going to do things differently. And I don't think they come in October and say, hey, Heim Bloom's our next guy, but he doesn't have full authority. Like I think Mo might operate technically above him, but I don't think it's going to be something where Heim wants to do something really bad and Mo vetoes it. I don't think that makes sense. And if it does, then that we will talk about that when it happens because that'll be horrible. Like that'll be a mess. And I don't think that's unity either. Like if you're going to say you're the next guy, then you have to let the next guy lead. So, anyways, with how big of a mess the Cardinals have been as of late, I wouldn't be surprised if they find a way to mess it up. But I feel kind of confident that it's going to be different. So, and then also too, like who knows? Maybe they take Gorman or Newbar this offseason. They're like, hey, we're just going to shake this offense up and we're going to use you to go get a Bryce Miller. We think Bryce Miller could be one of our best arms. And we're going to go sign this random free agent and he's going to be really good. Or we have this, I don't know. They could do some interesting things. So we'll see. Anything else on the payroll side of things you want to hit on?
Yeah, no, I just want to see the team win. And I think the teams generally with a higher payroll win more, and there's only one raise, right? Like, and not everyone can be the Rays, or else they would, right? So the Cardinals, like by putting less pressure on themselves to like be the best, like smartest team in the league, like you can be top 10 in payroll and still be a top 10 team, right? Like it's not that difficult. I think just spend like moderately smartly and then develop your players moderately well. And then if your payroll is high enough, you're gonna be better, right? Like
Yeah.
it's not that hard, right? The Rays probably have the best organization in baseball, and if you gave them another $200 million, they'd be better than the Dodgers. Like it's not really that that close. And more payroll just leads to a better product on the field. That's generally how it goes. It's very hard to
It
find teams.
can.
Well, yeah, it's hard to
Because
find teams with like really high payrolls that are just terrible. It's not. Well, the Angels are like the only one. I think.
well, so like look top payroll rankings right now. Mets have number one in baseball. So
Yeah,
they're not terrible, but they were last year. Dodgers, Yankees, Phillies, Astros, okay, good teams. Atlanta, good team. Well, they're third wild card right now. It's been again injuries, so it's been a year from hell for them. The Rangers are seventh, and they're
well, they just won the World Series, Josh.
yeah, okay, that's fair. Okay, but then here's where it gets messy though. It's that eighth payroll's the Cubs, which is like okay, whatever. The Blue Jays, the Giants, the Red Sox, Cardinals, the Angels. So again, you're starting to get down into the tens though. But I do think you're right. Most of the time, the teams that spend top 10 are some of the better teams in baseball. But it doesn't. But you can lead like like the Mets. You can lead the payroll, the league in payroll last year and not be a good team. So but I do think you're right. In general, it's usually goes in that direction. So maybe one other final conversation we can have. Again, we appreciate the support today. If you're watching for the first time, subscribe. It helps the channel out a ton. Like the channel as well. Again, we've got episodes that go up twice a week, but then we also have Kareem, who just started a prospects podcast over that will come out usually on Tuesdays, and really excited about that. So we hope you join us for that. I'm sure we'll talk more about like potential targets next offseason eventually. I think we'll get to that at some point, but I don't think we need to talk about that yet. I think there's more conversations to be had about what to do with Miles Michaelis and Lance Lynn or Steven Matz and all these guys. We'll get to those. We've kind of gotten to it. We'll get to it. But the one that's maybe percolating more that maybe we can finish out with is the Michael Ciani, Victor Scott thing. Again, Scott to me has the higher ceiling, especially offensively. He's not the defender Ciani is, but long term, could he be close to it? I think so. Again, he brings a lot more value defensively, but then who's the one getting starts right now that he's healthy? It's Michael Ciani. He had a really great game last night, right? Awesome play in center, some awesome defense in center field, clutch hits. What would you be doing with center field right now?
I would be starting Victor Scott every day. I think.
Yeah.
Siani's great. Um, he's just a bit of a redundancy on the roster, right? Like, I guess
Mm,
you keep him around a little bit, but he's kind of hit his ceiling so far. Slightly below league average bat, elite defense in center field. It's kind of much more than you expected to get from him at the start of the year, and he was kind of the stopgap because of Victor Scott's underperformance and because of all the other things that have been going on in center field. Right, you traded Tommy Edman, Dylan Carlson was terrible, and it just never really worked out. But he kind of found that role, and he did earn that role throughout the midseason. But Victor Scott came up because Siani was hurt, and offensively at least, which is kind of what you're looking for. Like, Scott's glove is going to come around. He just has too much talent for it not to. But his bat was better than Siani's bat, and if you're looking to win games, I think you go with Victor Scott, who's been offensively better, and you use Siani as a defensive replacement in late innings. Like, you sub out
yeah.
Burleson and you move Scott to right field like we saw yesterday. And I think that's the better way to win games even right now. I'm not really sure what Siani is doing that's so much better than Scott. Obviously, he had the big hit yesterday, almost made the big catch. He did make the big catch. The umpires just messed that up. But like, that's one anecdotal piece of evidence for why Siani should be playing. And honestly, like, the small sample size, if you're talking about that, it's like, if you're using last night's game as why Siani should be starting over Scott, I don't really think it is that viable, right? I think Scott has much more long-term future as a center fielder, unless you're thinking about trading him, which I don't think the Cardinals should do, and looking to Siani as a long-term center fielder, that doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Because they both profile as very similar players, but Scott has the stolen base tool in him. He has more power, just more exciting tools, and he's already coming along pretty nicely in the times that he was getting starts, right? So I don't know what they're doing. Um, I guess it might help them win more games a little bit down the stretch, but again, this team isn't going anywhere, barring the 17 game winning streak. Which, hey, who knows? Maybe that's coming right around the corner. Because Ollie getting ejected at American Family Field tends to be, if we're going based on small sample sizes, this team's about to go on a run and be the best team in baseball for the next month.
Probably. I do think there's some interesting things to note about Scott's like offense though. Last 2 weeks, he's 22% above league average. He's got almost 800 OPS. Victor Scott and 44 at bats. Like, so he's played really well. Again, really small sample size though. Okay, let's make the sample size a little bigger then. Second half. So obviously he played 18 games in the first half, got sent down. He was batting below 100 in 085 batting average. Second half, so 25 games, 80 at bats. He's come up. His batting average has gone from 088 or 85 to 225. So not great. But his WRC plus is 76. So instead of being negative, he's 30% below league average. So my point is, I'm not trying to tell you on Victor Scott being an awesome hitter right now, but again, last 2 weeks he's been really good. It's getting better. And I would like to see him continue to get more opportunities, like you said, because I do think the ceiling is just higher than what Siani gives you. Um, I agree that if they feel like Siani's a bit redundant, I would rather have him be the fourth or fifth outfielder for the defensive purposes. He can start every once in a while. It does get a little wonky though, because like if he's not filling in for Victor Scott, like can you start both Siani and Scott? I think you could every once in a while, but that's like it's a good defensive lineup, but like leaving a lot to be desired on the bat. But then if we trust Victor Scott's going to get better and be maybe closer to league average eventually, like then it's not as bad. I don't know. I agree that I think Scott's the guy. I think he should be the one they're running with right now. I don't think they necessarily need to get rid of one or the other, but I don't necessarily see the reason to be prioritizing Siani over Scott, especially now that it feels like Scott's a MLB player. Like I don't think he's going to sit in AAA again unless things go poorly. And so if you have him on the roster, I want him playing rather than sitting and Siani supposed playing. I think the only reason I would say you have to split them up is if they don't like if they do this where Scott's coming off the bench, not playing every day, and they're starting Siani, then I'm like, then you should get rid of him. But if they go the opposite direction, I think it makes sense because I don't know what Scott's value is anymore on the trade market. I don't think it was anything insane before, but I think he's more valuable as a trade chip than a backup. When I think the opposite for Siani. I think Siani's more valuable as a depth option for you in a backup. I think he's a trade chip. Like I don't think anyone's going to give you something super substantial for Michael Siani, but he's nice to have around. So I don't know. It's a weird one. But yeah, there's a lot of conversations about like new bar right now, and he's been bad, which he's been a lot better lately. I do think like next year's make or break for him, where he's entering. Are you turning into Dylan Carlson, Tyler O'Neill territory, or are you going to be a legit bat, or not legit bat, but like a legit player for the Cardinals? So yeah, we'll have to see with that. But I don't know what to do. I honestly feel like right now, if Scott's not going to play every day, I'd rather him finish the year in AAA. I don't love the idea of him sitting on the bench every day. It's weird. So I don't know. Well, we appreciate you guys. Oh, good.
A lot of sense, but we're not. So
what was that?
If we were in contention, it would make a lot of sense.
But to your point, like Scott brings you more offensively, and the defense I don't think is that far off. So like, I don't know. Siani is a Gold Glove defender, so like he is better than Scott. But I don't think it's like light.
He's not a Gold Glove defender because he didn't reach his threshold in the.
Yeah,
that doesn't make any sense. Whatever.
So what was he? 2 innings off.
2 innings off, but like they cut it off at like September, and it's like why?
So dumb. I actually legitimately feel really bad for Michael Siani because he would at least been a finalist, if not won a Gold Glove, and that's huge for someone's career. So, anyways, we appreciate the support today. We'll obviously be back on Sunday, maybe different time this weekend. We'll see. Again, like and subscribe if you enjoyed the channel, enjoyed this episode. Comment down below, or if you're listening later, let us know your thoughts on this conversation. Again, check out our podcast with Kareem that went live on Tuesday regarding prospects if you're interested in getting to know more of the prospect stuff, and we'll have more stuff on that in the future. We've got a special video coming out this weekend too that's kind of fun that Andrew and I recorded, so we'll have to see if you guys enjoy that kind of content. But again, we always really appreciate you guys' support. You guys make this worthwhile and really fun to do, and we couldn't do this without you. So greatly appreciate it. Again, thanks to 314 Sports Cards and Collectibles. Thanks to SeatGeek. Like and subscribe, and we will see you all next time.